But Ultraísta released their second album, Sister, today, and they're heading over to Rough Trade East for a performance later to mark the release. Now, this is the supergroup of sorts. Nigel Godrich, longtime Radiohead producer and widely considered the sixth member. Singer-songwriter and DJ Laura Bettinson, who's performed in various incarnations from Femme to now Laura. And Joey Waronker, who's the American drummer and producer, best known as session musician with Beck and R.E.M. He's also in Atoms for Peace with Tom York, Flea and Nigel Godrich. And it's been 8 years since their acclaimed debut. They're all very accomplished in their own right, and they've just been kind of busy.
I guess they've got a lot on.
Yeah, without other projects.
I'm not like quite as good a musician as them, but even I've really had time to put together my Dry Gin for Jen, No It's Dry Jan track.
Yeah.
So, I can see how these things happen.
Yeah. 8 years gestation, but they finally today give us album number 2, and they came in just this morning to talk about the record, which is titled Sister. We're going to hear more about it in detail in the next hour of Music News, but it kind of felt right to talk a little bit first about how coronavirus is impacting music. Hi guys, welcome to Six Music.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for coming in today. Quite a weird vibe out there in the streets, isn't it?
Little 28 days later going on out there.
Yeah.
So you've got a show tonight, haven't you? So are you feeling like things are going to get affected by coronavirus?
It's hard to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if no one shows up, we can always blame it on Corona. But I think it definitely feels a little odd. Definitely feels like just every few hours something else is kind of shutting down, isn't it? Which is it seems sort of like madness in a way, but on the other hand, I think it's just being responsible, isn't it? So we all have to sort of do our part and make sure that we can until we know exactly what's going to happen. We haven't seen anybody physically get ill and get better yet, so we don't know what's really going to happen.
Yeah, and it feels like things are snowballing. South by Southwest has been cancelled, Record Store Day has just been announced that's been postponed, tours left, right and centre. How do you think it's going to affect musicians and the music industry?
Hard to say right now.
I know somebody told me that just Coachella being cancelled is costing $1 billion. As a knock-on effect. So I think the big effects, hopefully there'll be minimal casualties. Obviously that's the priority, the most important thing, but really, an industry that's already strapped for cash and people struggling to get out and play shows and stuff, suddenly having to reschedule everything and cancel stuff it's terminal. It's really, really serious. So
hard on new bands. I don't know what you do if you lose like a small fortune of money that you spent to plan something. Like, how do you do it all over again?
And often with musicians, it's not like you're on a salary. I suppose the record label, there is a bit of that, but you're relying on getting out. Yeah, you're relying.
These things are very delicately balanced. Tours are very, very delicately balanced to just about pay for everything. It's whether you can do something or not, do a show or not do a show. It counts on whether another show pays for enough for you to get to the other show. So if you pull all of the shows, you literally are just left with a massive bill. And I know that there's insurance companies are going to be really, really vulnerable and probably fighting very hard to minimise their exposure. So, yeah, it's really rough. It's really tough.
Incredibly worrying.
Yeah. And we have the new single to play you now. So it's called Harmony. The album Sister is out today on Partisan Records. And before we hear the track, let's just hear a little bit more about Harmony.
We probably all have different takes on this song, really, but I said the other day to somebody that, and when I hear this song now, and I can detach myself as the person that sings it, it feels like you're hearing one side of an argument between a couple that knows each other very, very well. That's always how I hear this song. I don't know who those people are, honestly, but that's how I hear it.
In terms of like a bit of music, it came very, very long-winded. It was like a sort of weird jam in 6/8, which to those jazzers out there will appreciate it's quite difficult to turn into dance music, but we did it. We got a basically a kind of banging sort of tune in 6/8, which is quite funny.
Impossible to play in a DJ set.
Try and dance to it.
Probably, yeah.
I admire anybody that will try.
A lot of staring at the Rubik's Cube with this one. And it all coming together quite quickly, and then Laura and I jamming. Writing new music over an old jam. That's what it was.
And absolutely is now one of my favourite. I think has come out as one of the best tracks on the record. For a while there, I was a bit confused by the whole thing, but it turned a corner.
We pushed on through, didn't we, Laura?
We did. We pushed on through, and now it is it's a really powerful song, I think so.
So let's hear more from Ultraísta. They released their second album, Sister, today. This is the supergroup of Nigel Godrich, who's the longtime radio head producer, considered the sixth member, singer-songwriter DJ Laura Bettinson, Joey Waronker, the American drummer and producer best known as a musician with Beck and R.E.M., who's also in Atoms for Peace with Tom York, Flea and Nigel. So it's been 8 years since their debut, which saw them tour globally. They did a bunch of high-profile television performances around the world. The record was released to critical acclaim. And Nigel, Laura and Joey of Ultraísta came in this morning to discuss the record. We sat here, you guys came in 8 years ago. It feels like yesterday.
I was just about to say, feels like yesterday. Yeah. Well, like might I say, none of us have aged a bit. Yes, a long time. Yeah, it's it's been a very, very, very busy 8 years for all of us, I think, right, guys?
True.
Yeah.
So, the world being what it is, and also the way that the kind of music industry is the way it is these days, it's like we're not under any obligation to keep like churning out music. We just do it when we want to do it, which I think is a really nice thing and a gift, really, the chance that we can enjoy it rather than being sort of feeling compelled to do it by some external force.
Yeah. So when did the wheels get in motion to start making this record? When did you first start having conversations like, we should get in the studio again together?
Basically, it goes all the way back to when we were promoting the first album. Like, we managed to steal a few hours of rehearsal in LA, and we started with the bare bones of what became this album right way back then. So, we've had kind of the idea in motion for several years, but it wasn't until the last kind of 18 months, 2 years, that we've kind of pulled it all together.
Yeah, it was a lot of kind of sifting through bits and bobs leisurely when I had some time, and then finding things and extrapolating them and then playing them to the guys, and then Laura and I getting in the studio and trying a few things out, and we sort of did that, picked it up and put it down a few times until it got to the point where it sort of felt like, okay, now we need to commit and we should concentrate and focus on it and get it done. If you're going to do something, you've got it. The art of making art is putting it all together. So it's all very well staring at your navel and like throwing things in the air, but you have to focus and make it and finish it.
And lyrically, Laura, are you responsible for the lyrics?
No, not at all. It's
sort of
kind of a combined effort, really. Some of them were written together. Some of them, were written by me. Some of them were written by Nigel.
If I write something, I know Laura's going to sing it, so I have to kind of get it past her. It's like we still have to try and see if it fits and works. And when we workshop stuff, we do things and modify them and work together a lot. And we spent a lot of time doing that, which is a really interesting, fun process.
What themes were you exploring lyrically this time around?
Every song is about relationships. all pop music is about, love, isn't it?
I feel there's a lot of introspection on this record. It's a little bit more vulnerable. It's a little bit more emotional. You could say less abstract than our first record, possibly. I don't know. I feel we're letting you in a bit deeper on this record, perhaps. I don't really.
Yeah, we started with word games, to kind of create mashups of those things where you sort of read meaning into sort of a checkerboard of words. And then as you try and sort of write more kind of traditional song structures, you need to have coherence. So you sort of think about, unwittingly things come forward and you start sort of putting together these kind of verses of stuff. I don't know. I always say I hate talking about this stuff because, it means to you what it means to you. Every great song is about like projecting your own meaning on something. And it's very, very hard talking about music generally, I find, because really you could just listen to it and make up your own mind, but you shouldn't really say that on a radio station on your release day. Sorry.
No, it is the question that all artists across the board hate, so I'm sorry that I sort of strong-armed you into it.
No, it's cool.
What are your lyrics about? It's like, don't ask me that question. But you're right, people take different meanings. But I do love the way in Tin King it's this sort of sprawling, lots of ideas and thoughts.
Well, the idea is it doesn't make sense and then it makes sense.
Totally.
The idea is that the whole thing is slowly coming to focus over the course of it all, and it starts off as an anarchic mess, and then it's just it's an existential crisis by the end.
Form.
Am I in the right hands? That's what it is. That's
accurate,
what.
Actually.
Yeah.
I'd say the whole record is a record to get immersed in and lost in. It's quite a dizzying record. The instrumentation and the lyrics, the whole feel of it. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. When I listen to some, I feel like I could drown in it. It's just like you just get. It is quite sad, and it moves me. And I sang it. But it is weird. I feel when I listen to it,
it's an interesting relationship between, you know, the kind of science and art of recorded music. It really is a fascinating thing, because the participants really do there is a point where they cross the line and start listening to something as an objective listener. You know, when you've made something, you do step away from it at a certain point. If you can do that while you're making it, it's extremely powerful, because you get a very, very accurate depiction in your head of what's going on, which helps you work. But usually it's like 20 years later, you know, that you can actually hear it. I mean,
Right.
I mean, I think we've just listened to this record so much that other people telling us that, like what you just said, if you tell me it's dizzying, and, you know, I'm very happy, because that's a perspective, you have perspective that I don't have.
Just on that, is there anything from your career in music with Radiohead or whatever where you have had that perspective 20 years later and you've gone, oh my God, that whatever made sense? Or
Well, I can give you two examples. One is the kind of, you know, re-releasing OK Computer. When I listen to it, I'm like, all right, you know, like I now understand why people got excited about it, because I can see the power behind it. And in a way, that's really just from sort of being able to hear, funnily enough, the lyrics and the songs, you know, having objectivity from that, because I've been thinking about things in a different way before when you're making it. So that's one example. So yes, that's striking. The other example is Joey and I made a record called Mutations with Beck, which was, it was in total 14 days, and we made a whole album. And we daily, like the day after doing something, we couldn't remember what we'd done the day before. You know, it was so fast moving, because it was such a productive time. It was just so great to hear what you did the day before last, because you just don't remember doing it. And it just was like, okay, this is great, and it feeds into what you're about to do. And so that's like an optimum thing. And I think that maybe in the old days that used to be like what it was like making records, you know. I mean, James Brown or Frank Sinatra would go in and leave with an acetate.
Right, it's done.
But Ultraísta takes 8 years to get an MP3. You know, it's like, I mean, the entire Beatles career was in eight years, wasn't it?